Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swamini Tinamane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharine Nirvisesha Srinivadi Paschati Dasatane Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshuru Meditam Dena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. So we are back in Alachua. Today is Monday. And Prabhupada said it's crazy if you don't know the date. And I don't know the date, and I'm looking at my watch. And one of the hens is covering the date, and I think it's the 11th of August. No. The 8th of August? 9th of August? Who knows what date it is? Okay, so we are going to be speaking about continuing our topic, which is the truth about love. And I have decided that the higher intricacies, the technical aspects of prema, which is love, we won't talk about. And I mentioned previously, you can learn about them if you want. It's there in Nectar Devotion, Chaitanya Charitamrita. But it divides love into various levels further and describes the emotions and feelings and intensities. And not understandable that well to most of us because we can't really relate to it, because we don't have experience of it. And I sense that if we talk much about it, it's interesting to some. If you're scholarly, then it would be very interesting to you. But I don't know how well you'll understand it. Even the levels of bhava, we briefly discussed. Not much, and even that. I've studied it. And again, unless you're on that level, it doesn't mean a lot. It's more of an exercise of knowledge. This is what it is. And then after bhava, there's prema, and this is what prema is. And then ultimately, it manifests in the highest degree in Srimati Radharani, in what is called Mahabhav. And Mahaprabhu exhibited Mahabhav. It's the highest form of love. And so, to understand this love, it's best understood through the Leelas of Mahaprabhu and also through the Leelas of Krishna and Vrindavan, especially through the gopis. Brajabhadu Bargena Chal Kalpita, that there's no one who has love like the gopis, so we understand this love through their love. And there's a nice story. Who has the greatest love for Krishna? Because whoever has the greatest love, then we can understand love, or we can learn about love from them, right? So, wait, excuse me, I will put on the chat, just in case you have questions. And if you have questions, please ask them. I was thinking this could be the last in this series, because I think we've kind of, I don't know if you can never exhaust fully Krishna consciousness, but if we try to go further in this topic, it's going to get quite esoteric. But anyway, once Krishna was speaking to Uddhava, and he said, Uddhava, you're more dear to me than Sankarshan, the goddess of fortune. You're even more dear to me than Lord Shiva. You're more dear to me than my own self. So we could ask, who is the dearest devotee of Krishna? And you could say, based on this verse, you could say the dearest devotee of Krishna is Uddhava. And then Krishna had sent Uddhava to Vrindavan to pacify the residents of Vrindavan, because Krishna didn't go back, as he said he would, And so they were all suffering in separation. And when Uddhava went to Vrindavan and saw the intense devotion and intense love of the Brajbasis, then Uddhava prayed that he would he could take birth or somehow become a blade of grass in Vrindavan, because that way, for sure, sooner or later, the residents of Braj, and the gopis especially, would walk on him. And that was his greatest aspiration when he saw their love. So that means that the love of the residents of Vrindavan, and especially the love of the gopis, and especially the love of the unmarried gopis, the younger girls, Lalita, Vishaka, and ultimately Radharani, they exhibit highest love of Krishna. Now, if we want to understand something about love of Krishna, which is so difficult to understand, then we understand it through the lives and actions of the gopis. And, of course, the lives and actions of all the great devotees, but specifically, the gopis are put on the highest pedestal of love. And you all know that story. Krishna had a headache, and Narada Muni went to various devotees, and they said, well, we can't give Krishna the foot dust, the dust from our feet. And that's what Narada Muni was asking for, because it's not proper if you don't touch your feet to Krishna, but you want Krishna to put his feet on your head. But when the gopis were asked, aren't you worried that if you give the dust from your feet to Krishna, that would be an offense, and that you would go to hell? And they said, well, that doesn't matter, but you said Krishna has a headache, and we can't tolerate that Krishna has a headache, and if the dust from our feet will cure the headache, then yes, we are very anxious to give it. And whatever the consequence, then we'll accept that. It doesn't matter. So that mood of what matters is only Krishna's pleasure is exhibited by the gopis, and it doesn't matter what I want. And I had mentioned in a few classes earlier that Prabhupada's definition of love is that you have no self-interest, but you only have the interest of the other person. And we had said that that's why Prabhupada said there's really no love in this material world, or there's only maybe a semblance of it, because the love that's manifest in this world usually comes along with a desire that the so-called beloved will fulfill you. And so many times we see when there are love quarrels, it's often around the fact that the other person didn't satisfy you. They didn't give you what you wanted or needed or what you expected. So you're really thinking about your own needs, which is, of course, human. And if you don't think about your needs, you, as a human, until you're transcendental, you could go crazy. So, what is human, and the human needs, which are normal, which are fulfilled by a friend or a parent or a lover. In the transcendental realm, those needs don't exist, so therefore the love can be pure because there's no personal need to fulfill. And it's interesting because all the quarrels of love in this world are usually around the lack of or expectations that weren't met. This is what I expected, or this is what you said you would do, or this is what I needed from you and I didn't get it. Something is lacking that I need or I want. Something lacking in my partner. And but the quarrels of love between Radha and Krishna, they're not like that. But one of the things I was thinking this morning, in kind of summarizing this topic, is that we really can't understand the transcendental leelas of Krishna. At the same time, we hear them and we try to appreciate them as best we can. And you know the saying, it takes one to know one. So you can't fully understand transcendental love of Krishna if you don't have it. It's very difficult to understand the actual nature of Krishna's Leelas if we're not transcendental. And that's why in the Gita, Krishna says, Janma karma chame divyam, my birth and karma activities are divyam, they're transcendental. Janma karma chame divyam, evam yoveti tattva. And if you understand the tattva, you understand the truth of them, which is, in this sense, you could say tattva is the knowledge, just understanding they're transcendental. Then, janma karma chame divyam evam yoveti tattva takta deha puna, then you can become free from birth and death. So, if we are not somewhat transcendental, if we're not following some principles to control our senses, then we won't understand Krishna's Leela, because we won't have access to understanding anything beyond sense gratification. And that's why we are cautioned to be very careful about hearing about Krishna's pastimes with gopis. Now it's interesting, as you know, Prabhupada gave the Krishna book. It came out in 1970, and so we were young devotees, not very mature. And in Krishna book, you have Rasa Leela, which is something very, very high. And we should be cautious in approaching it, because we can easily misunderstand it. So Prabhupada tried to explain it to us as best he could, so that we could understand the tattva, the truth of the divyam and the karma, the transcendental nature of janma and karma, Krishna's birth and activities. And so, in the Bhagavatam it says that if you hear about Krishna's pastimes with the gopis, it will cure the disease of the heart. The disease of the heart is lust. It will get cured. But there's also a warning that it could act like poison if you're not qualified. And so, it's interesting, because we were distributing Krishna books, because you could make the argument, well, for us who are following the regulative principles, we have some access to understanding the Leelas, and we're prevented from the Leelas turning into poison because we're engaged in sadhana bhakti. But what about everybody else? But Prabhupada gave the tattva, and then Krishna says, if you know the tattva, then you understand these pastimes are not ordinary. At least that much we have to accept. And if we don't accept that, if we don't understand that, then when you hear the pastimes of Krishna, especially with the gopis, it has a poisonous effect. And rather than cure the disease of the heart, it actually increases it. And there are many people, and this is something that I've never really, not that I can't understand it, but I can't understand it, if that makes sense. Or I can understand it in theory, but my heart can't understand that why anyone would think this way. But people hear the Leelas of Krishna and then they imitate them, or they think they have a right to act as Krishna acts, when clearly they are not Krishna. And Bhagavatam, it gives examples and it gives instructions to prevent people from doing this, but people still do it. So the crooked desires of the heart are such that one would hear about Krishna's pastimes, then become inspired to imitate them. So Bhagavatam gives the example that Lord Shiva drank an ocean of poison. And if you're not Lord Shiva, you can't do that, because when he drank it, he didn't die. If we do it, we'll die. And so in the same way, you can't imitate great persons. You can't imitate Lord Shiva. What to speak of imitating Krishna? But you can try to serve those pastimes by hearing about them with reverence and with devotion, and with the intention of purifying your heart, with the intention of understanding the transcendental nature of those pastimes. And so Krishna says, and if you understand the transcendental nature of those pastimes, then takta deha punarjanma, you won't take birth. So that's the idea. So this morning I was thinking how I was reading something where it was said that until we come to the stage of ruchi, and ruchi means taste, situated on the stage where everything in Krishna consciousness is tasty. Until we come to that stage of ruchi, well, we can't really understand what love of Krishna is. And the reason is because until we come to the stage of ruchi, the lust within the heart is fairly strong. We're somewhat controlled by it, or at least it's affecting us to some degree. And when there's lust in the heart, it makes it difficult to understand what love of Krishna is, because love of Krishna is free from lust. And if you have no experience of what it's like to live without lust, it makes it more difficult to understand the transcendental nature of Krishna. And still, as I said, Prabhupada gave the Krishna book, which is full of Krishna's transcendental pastimes, and so simultaneously, by hearing the pastimes, we become free from lust, and then as we become free from lust, then we understand more of the pastimes. So the solution to become free from lust is to hear the pastimes, even if we don't understand them well. And it's interesting the way Prabhupada has given us Krishna consciousness, because in one sense, you could say we until we're more advanced, we shouldn't hear these pastimes. And the other sense is what I said, that by hearing these pastimes, we'll become more advanced. And so the way Prabhupada has given us Krishna in his books, it enables us to hear the pastimes right from the beginning. And if we're following principles of Krishna consciousness, or at least we're hearing from him and understanding Krishna through him, then we become purified by hearing the pastimes, even if we don't understand them. So that's an interesting point, that would you read something over and over again if you don't understand it? Well, materially speaking, that's one way to understand it, is read it over and over again. But you could say, but would you read it over and over again if you're incapable of understanding it? And you might say, well, I would wait to a point in time when I'm intelligent enough or mature enough to understand it. But in Krishna consciousness, we would say, no, read it, because the reading is purification, even if you don't understand. Now, it doesn't mean we don't try to understand, but we asked Prabhupada, I mentioned this before, we asked Prabhupada when the Nectar of Devotion was first published, that there's certain parts of it that we understand, and there's certain parts of it that are way over our head about rasa. And we never heard such things, and it's completely transcendental. There's no way to relate to it within this world, what Krishna's doing in his leelas. And then Nectar of Devotion was categorizing Krishna's pastimes in different ways, by rasa, by bhav, talking about different stages and aspects of bhav and prema and rasa abhas. There are direct relationships, 5, and then there are 7 indirect, like chivalry and so forth. They're called indirect rasas. So we're hearing all these things, and a lot of this was, you could say, above our head. I would say it's above our heart. It's really more accurately to say it's above our heart. It's just, in a sense, you could understand something with your head, some of the theory. Even that was difficult, but with the heart, we just couldn't relate to it. So, devotee asked Prabhupada, well, what do we do? Because we're reading something we don't understand. And Prabhupada gave an interesting answer, which is what we're talking about. He said, just keep reading it, and someday you'll understand. But it wasn't so much your head will understand, but by reading it and by continuing to execute your devotional service, your heart will understand it. And so that's ultimately how we understand love of Krishna. We understand it by getting it, by having it, developing a drop, getting a drop of it in our heart, a drop of attachment, a drop of taste, a drop of affection, something. Now, Krishna's pastimes have nothing to do with lust, and that's a primary tattva for understanding them, that you can't approach them by relating them to anything in this world, because it has nothing to do with this world. And if we're going to understand what love of Krishna is, even if there's friends, even if there's mother, father, even and especially conjugal love, boyfriend and girlfriend, we can't you can't relate it to anything in our experience. And our nature, the human nature, is when you don't understand something, you try to relate it to something you understand, isn't it? That's just how we function. Okay, what do I understand already that can help me understand something that right now I don't understand? Isn't it? Isn't that how we think? We're always trying to grasp onto something we don't understand through something we understand. What can I understand about this situation or about this topic? I don't understand much, but what can I understand? What is in my experience? What is in my realm of knowledge that allows me to grasp something about this? So you don't actually do that in Krishna Lila. Because if you try to... sometimes Prabhupada will give material examples to illustrate something spiritual, like the love of a mother for her child. It's the closest thing to the love of a devotee for Krishna, or the love Krishna has for his devotees. Only because of the purity of that love. But the love itself it's not the love that a mother has for a child is not exactly representative of the love Jasoda has. And so if you try to understand Jasoda's love through the love of a mother, it's going to fall short. The principle of selflessness is there, and that's about as far as it really goes. It doesn't, the love, that realm of love of the mother for the child, it's so contaminated in the material world by expectations and desires to be fulfilled that the children will fulfill, and the need to control the children. You have to control, you have to discipline, you have to do so many, you have to worry so much about them. It's obviously a different rasa. So, in other words, the point I'm making is that if it falls short, and if we put too much, if we try to understand the transcendental too much through this world, we're just going to get confused. So, the way Prabhupada explained Krishna's Leelas and Krishna's love is you start on a platform basically where you understand that it's not reflecting, you could say pervertedly reflecting, but it doesn't really reflect in any deep sense the activities of this world. It's all the activities of this world. It would only reflect it in a very perverted way. So it may have some of the same elements. Boys and girls fight, they feel separation and so forth. But the foundation of it is not love. The foundation of it is lust. And we all know that the word love, for example, in this world, in the world sex, and the word sex, sometimes they're interchanged. We made love last night, which is a way of saying we had sex. So you understand what I'm saying? It's like the way we use words defines how we see things. And so, when people talk of love, it's always infused with lust. That's kind of the basis of it, that I love you, I'm attracted to you on the basis of your beauty or your charm or something, but it's activating my lust. And then my lust is that I want to be with you. And then if you run off with another man, or if you're a woman, you run off. If you're a man, run off with another woman. A woman, you run off with another man. And then the husband or wife is tormented. when Krishna left Vrindavan, it also says that the gopis and the Brajavasis were tormented. But if you study it more, they're actually experiencing a higher ecstasy because it intensified their thinking of Krishna. So you can see how that they weren't. In other words, they weren't tormented by an absence of sense gratification. And because of lust, when we lose our lover, then we're tormented by the absence of the sense gratification and the satisfaction and the security and all the things material that we were getting from that person. So what are we feeling separation from? We're feeling separation from all the things we got that were the things we needed to gratify ourselves. But that's not what the gopis feel. It's not what the Brajavasis feel. They're feeling separation that's increasing their love for Krishna. And so what they're feeling is emotions which are ecstatic, so separation becomes ecstatic. And in the material world, separation is not ecstatic. Sometimes it's actually quite miserable. Although there's a saying, absence makes the heart grow fonder, so in the absence, the attachment grows. But even if the attachment grows materially, it doesn't bring this kind of ecstasy because the person you're attached to is not made of transcendental bliss, Ladini Shakti. That's not their nature. I mean, spiritually it's their nature. But we're relating to them materially, so the nature of that relationship is not Satchidananda. It's just the opposite. I was just in South Florida with my in-laws, and they live in a 55 and above retirement home. And a lot of people in their late 70s, early 80s, that generation seems to be living longer than the current generation, like my generation. So I have a lot of devotees I know have already left their bodies in their 60s, which kind of, it's not, at least for my in-laws' generation, that's less common. And these people are very attached to one another. Because one of the things that I saw was that they've all been married about 50 years, and so they're very, very close, and they sacrifice a lot for one another. And you could say, in a sense, that at this point in time, their love is deeper than it ever was. Maybe it's not more intense because the lust is not there, but the relationship is deeper. So when they were first married, it was very much fired by lust, and that was called love. But actually, from an objective perspective, you can say if there is any love in that relationship, there's much more of it now. And they need one another's support more than ever. And yes, they will be devastated in separation from their partner because of all that their partner gives. And the wonderful thing in Krishna consciousness is that even when you're separated from Krishna, you're not, because by thinking of Krishna, by chanting Krishna, you're with him, which is quite special. But anyway, I don't know if I deviated here, I'm trying to make the point that in order to understand that love, we have to be advancing in Krishna consciousness, and to the degree that we advance, it's to that degree we'll understand what love is, by our own purification, by our own freedom from lust, by our own entrance, at least into the mode of goodness where we're free from the pullings and pushings of lust and greed and so forth. Then we can start to understand a little bit about what love of Krishna means. Another wonderful aspect of love of Krishna, and it's the way it manifests is not it's not material, so it's not the way you might think love would manifest naturally. But I was talking yesterday about this preacher that I saw, and his prosperity gospel was about how much God loves you, and that manifests in how he'll give you all the things you want in life. And he was referring to the better job, the better house, the financial, all the things that are important materially that many of us have to deal with, most of us have to deal with. And their concerns, so he addresses those concerns. And when Krishna loves his devotees, it doesn't necessarily manifest the way they think it manifests. Because the ultimate aspect of Krishna's love, when we say you get Krishna's mercy, is that love of him develops in your heart. And for that love of him to develop in your heart, our heart, sometimes he might do something which materially doesn't seem like he loves you, but it's actually love because it's helping you get love and get his love. I mean, it's helping you, okay, it's a little early. It's helping you develop your love for him. So his real love for you is anything that helps you develop your love for him, because our love for Krishna is the greatest wealth. Love of Krishna is the greatest wealth. It's called Prema Pumarta Mahan. Beyond the four goals of life, which are Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha, there's love. So it's considered the highest goal or the greatest wealth. So that's what Krishna is giving. And so he manifests his love to us by helping us develop that love. And it may not align materially. It may and may not. Materially, there may be some difficulties which would help us in coming closer to him. And Krishna knows our attachments and he knows what we need. And sometimes he allows difficulties to come to us that will push us forward. So from a common religionist perspective, love comes more in the form of things that a father would give a son, the nice things in life, the pleasures of life. And many Christians believe that God wanted you to enjoy, which is Prabhupada has said also, but the way they understand God wanted you to enjoy and the way we understand it is different, or the way Prabhupada meant it. And Prabhupada meant it in terms of God wants you to enjoy by realizing that you are full of enjoyment by entering into rasa with him and experiencing the Hladini internal pleasure potency. That's what Prabhupada meant. But they mean God wants you to enjoy everything that's enjoyable, so-called enjoyable in this world. It's a very weird philosophy, but it reflects their ignorance, and it reflects their attachment, and it reflects their definition of enjoyment, and also then, therefore, it affects their definition of love, because if enjoyment is based on the body and you love me, then you will give me things, like you'll give me, for my birthday, a certificate to get a free massage, or 10 massages, because I love my body and the massages are enjoyable, of course. For health, that's another thing, but I'm using this as an example of a physical pleasure. Or for my birthday, you'll give me things that will be helpful or enjoyable physically. And that's because you love me and you want me to enjoy my senses, because that's your definition of happiness is the enjoyment of senses, which is a complete contradiction to any spiritual definition of happiness, which therefore shows how bankrupt they are in terms of understanding love. So God loves you and he gives you things. And so we understand that when Krishna loves us, he gives us mercy that enables us to understand him better, to serve him better, and understand what love of Krishna is. Right? And so, love, because love means there's no impurity, and that's very difficult for us to realize because we have impurity. But if you look at, I think we discussed this before, in the stages of development, the 9 stages of development, from faith all the way to prema. As you advance in each stage, you're becoming more free from the lower modes of nature, which means you're becoming more free from lust and envy and greed and so forth, because these are the attributes of the lower modes of nature. So as you get higher and higher, then more love manifests. And as you get higher, that means there's less lust, there's less greed, there's less anger, there's less envy. So these qualities, as they become less and less and less, then love manifests. And even we had discussed on the stage of bhava, there's still some impurity is there. And then generally the devotee enters from the stage of bhava after he leaves his body, enters Krishna Lila. And then in Krishna Lila, he becomes completely purified and he achieves prema. And prema is that state where there's no impurity. So the degree of impurity is the degree that we don't love Krishna. And so how we understand love of Krishna is to the degree of purity we have, when the degree of purity means the freedom from lust, greed, and so forth. So when you understand that, then it has become so clear, this statement of Prabhupada, that there's no love in the material world. Because love of Krishna exists in a state which is transcendental to the modes of nature. Vishuddha sattva, it's pure, right? So, now, what about Krishna? How does he manifest his love? Or what kind of love does he have? Or is his love different than our love? Well, because he's God, it's more intense. As Prabhupada said, you take one step, he takes 10 towards you. So he can reciprocate with more affection and more love. But interestingly, he says if he feels that Radharani has more love for him, then he can manifest for her. So that's why Radharani and the gopis are glorified, because their love for Krishna is even more intense than his love for them. And therefore he became as Mahaprabhu. He said, I can't even experience this kind of love. I want to experience it. It's so intense. But in any case, Krishna, his ambition, or he exists to reciprocate, or to give his love to his devotees. That's all he does. It's like if you ask Krishna, you say, if someone asks, well, people ask us, what do you do? Meaning, what do you do for a living? Oh, I'm a teacher, or I'm a carpenter, I'm a lawyer, I'm a doctor, I'm an accountant, I'm an engineer, I'm a programmer. And so what does God do for a living? Well, God in the form of Vishnu, he creates, maintains, and destroys through the agency of Brahma and Shiva. He makes sure the world's, working, it's going on. He deals with disputes between the demons and demigods and discrepancies within the universe. So he's basically, maintaining. And then you could say he's taking care of people by awarding karma, which Yamaraj does, but at least you could say he's overseeing everything. So he appoints people to do it. At least he's appointed them to make sure it goes on. So that much he's doing. And then he's engaged in his leelas in Vaikuntha with his queens and other servitors. But if you ask, well, what does Krishna do? And then you analyze, like if we said, well, let's look at what you do all day, and then we'll analyze exactly what it is you do, what your job is. I don't know what your job is. Don't tell me. I'll figure it out by hanging around with you and seeing what you do. So if you did that with Krishna, then what would you say, Krishna, what his job is? What is his job description? When he's in the form of Shyam Sundar, not as Vishnu. The Vishnu job description, everybody knows, God the creator, the maintainer, the one who fulfills. People can ask things of him. He provides what we need. He maintains all forms of life. Yeah. But Krishna's not, if you look at Krishna's activities, he's not doing that. He's not doing any maintenance work, right? That's Vishnu's position. So what does he do? Okay, so externally, he's a cowherd boy. So you could say, well, Krishna's position is he's a cowherd boy. I mean, he's also a son. He was very young when he left Vrindavan. So in Vrindavan, what did he do? What's his job description? But if you analyze it more carefully, his job description is love. Because that's what he's doing. In every interaction, he is exchanging love. And he is the embodiment of love, and he can't do anything other than that. That's just what he does. And you might say, well, he's externally doesn't seem exactly like that, because these demons are coming to try to kill him, so he's defending himself. And he's defending the devotees, and he's defending the residents of Vrindavan. So how is that love? And he's herding cows, and that they're cowherd boys, and it's a cowherd community. And his parents need him to do that, so he's doing his dharma as a Vaishya. So then I would say he's a cowherd boy. And he's also protecting the residents of Vrindavan. And then you could say, okay, if you say you say everything's about love, I could say, all right, with the gopis we see them. It's all about love. That we can understand, but here you're saying 24/7, well, if you calculate Vrindavan time is 24/7, but is it 24/7 love? No, I don't see that. But if you analyze Krishna's activities, why he's doing everything, and certainly he doesn't have to do anything, so whatever he does, he's choosing to do. Even if demons are coming, he's arranging that for his pastime. So if you analyze everything that Krishna does, he's only doing it to increase the love of his devotees. And you might say, well, what about when he kills demons? How does that work? This is how it works. Prabhupada describes, said, when Krishna kills a demon, who is there to watch? It's the cowherd boys. So the cowherd boys come back in the evening and they tell their mothers, you won't believe what happened today. There was this big demon and he looked like this, and Krishna pulled his hind legs, swirled him in the air, threw him in the trees, and killed him. And then Prabhupada said, when the gopis heard this, what they would do is they would write poems or songs, and then they would sing. So all day they had these leelas to sing about. If God doesn't do anything, what do you sing about? So you can sing some things, but they're singing, glorifying his leela. So he's performing those activities so that we have something to sing about, talk about, and hear about. And by singing, talking, and hearing about his activities, what happens is our love increases. And Krishna's love for us is also to help us develop love for him, because that's what he wants. So he does things which help us increase his love for him. That's how he shows one of the ways he shows his love to us, is by doing things that would increase our love. So if you analyze Krishna's activities from that perspective, and then ask the question, what does he do? Then the answer would be, he does love. Whatever he does is meant to increase our love. Even if he teases the gopis, even if he steals their clothes, which is naughty or immoral, even if he steals buttered yogurt, what's the result? If you study, what's the result of this? Is everybody mad? Is everybody upset? Well, externally they are. But when you see what actually happens is that everyone just becomes more attracted to Krishna. Like the gopis, they would complain to Mother Yasoda, your son is coming and he's stealing our butter and yogurt. But when they would go to Mother Yasoda to try to complain, and they'd see how beautiful Krishna is, and Mother Yasoda would see how beautiful Krishna is, like nobody could complain, because their love for Krishna was just coming out of their hearts. And it's like, how can you complain about someone that you love so much? So Krishna is enacting these leelas to nurture this love. And you see in those pastimes it always ends up that everyone is loving Krishna more and more than ever before, right? Isn't it? Isn't that how it works? Yeah. So if you study the pastimes, whatever happens, that it all has a happy ending, because the ending is that everyone becomes more attached to Krishna. Like Krishna allowed himself to get caught in the coils of Kaliya. Then it was quite a dramatic event, because Kaliya had poisoned the water of Jamuna. And boys are used to drinking the water of Jamuna. So they drank the water and they all looked like they died or fainted. So now all these boys are apparently dead on the bank of the Jamuna, and Krishna's caught in the hoods of the Kaliya serpent. And so, wow, what's going on? Well, I don't think everyone was fainted, but many of them saw Krishna and they're thinking, okay, this is it. Kaliya is going to destroy our Krishna. So the emotion was very intense. Of course, Krishna was victorious. He brought everyone back to life, or back to consciousness. And everyone just loved him that much more. Same thing with Govardhan Leela. Amazing. You know, one aspect of Govardhan Leela you may not be aware of is that Krishna cannot... In Krishna Leela, Krishna has arranged his Leelas in a way that's very difficult for the gopis and Krishna to be together, because they're unmarried. Or even if they're married, that's wrong also. So Krishna has arranged for the gopis to be of an age which is to be unmarried and young, so it's improper that they're together. Or to be a little older and married, which is also improper to be together. So in order for them to be together, they have to sneak out, and so they do it at night, and they have to run out of their homes when everyone's asleep. And Krishna does that because when things are difficult, you value them more, so the relationship is valued more, right? So, in any case, when Krishna lifted Govardhan Hill, he did that, or one of the things, he did it for many reasons, but one of the ways he was reciprocating with the gopis was, this was the first time they could be with Krishna all day. Like the cowherd boys are with Krishna all the time. And they could, because they're boys, they can not only be with Krishna when they're herding cows, they can come over to his house, which they do. They can help him get dressed, which they often do. They can just hang with him. There's no problem because they're boys. They don't, except for the few intimate ones that are assisting in Krishna's Leela with the gopis. The other ones aren't present when Krishna's enacting his rasa dance or intimate Leelas in the evenings with the gopis. So now Krishna lifts Govardhan Hill, 7 days, 7 nights, everybody stayed under the hill. Of course, everyone was fine. They didn't have to eat, sleep, whatever. It was just, you're with Krishna, and that's not necessary. So they got to be with Krishna for 7 days straight. So Krishna was reciprocating. He knew their desire, and he wanted to fulfill it. And they got to gaze at Krishna's beautiful face constantly, which they otherwise wouldn't have an opportunity to do. So Krishna was reciprocating with them, showing his love for them. And every time Krishna shows his love for them by reciprocating, it increases their love. And what Krishna relishes most is the love of his devotee. So Krishna does things to increase the love of his devotees. Now, how does that relate to us? Well, if we understand that what Krishna likes is love, and of course we've heard it, but now if you go to Krishna's pastimes and you understand that everything Krishna's doing is to bring out the love of it in the heart of his devotees, because he thrives on that love, it inspires us and gives us a perspective that in our lives, when we talk about satisfying Krishna, we can see clearly what satisfies Krishna is love, because everything Krishna's doing with his devotees is just to bring that love out. Everything, you analyze everything, and you'll see in Krishna Leela, Krishna doesn't do anything unless it's going to enhance the devotee's love. Even if the demons come and everybody's afraid, you see what the coward boys, they take shelter of Krishna when they're afraid, so it increases their attachment. And we do the same thing when we're afraid. We take more shelter of Krishna. When there's more difficulty, we pray. So if we understand this principle, now then we apply it in our lives, and if we think that whatever is going on in my life, ultimately, if I want to be Krishna conscious, it is Krishna's arrangement to help me. Even if we do something stupid, which is not Krishna's desire, it can, by Krishna's mercy, have a positive effect because we suffer. And a lot of our suffering is just due to our ignorant activities. But in any case, if we see that everything that's constructed in this world ultimately is meant to awaken our love of Krishna, then whatever happens in our life, we can think of it in a positive way. We can think, well, this is good because Krishna loves me and he's doing this to awaken my love. And then sometimes it comes out in perverted ways. Like, I was talking to one devotee, and this devotee was finding it difficult to get association to where I can't remember who it was, where he or she lives. But in those difficulties and wanting that association, it's making them more Krishna conscious because they're thinking more about the devotees and they're feeling this separation from the devotees. So the negative becomes the positive. And so that happens, and so often that happens in our life, where the negative becomes positive, right? So if we can see everything in a positive, that everything that is happening, Krishna is doing to awaken our love, even if it comes in the form of some material misery. If we think, well, this is Krishna wants me to love him, he wants me to depend on him, and this is why he's doing this, then we only see the merciful hand of Krishna in everything. And we, as I said, we reinforce this idea just by analyzing Krishna's pastimes and seeing that he doesn't do anything that doesn't enhance the love of his devotees. And why? Because, as I said, because you could say Krishna is a connoisseur of love. That's what Rasika means. He thrives on love. He needs love. That's his food. And knowing that, we try to love Krishna. We try to love our spiritual master because that pleases Krishna. So everything in bhakti it's all about pleasing Krishna. And if you look at our whole philosophy of transcending lust, greed, and so forth, is because unless you do that, how can you love Krishna if we're full of lust? Isn't it? It is. You're right. It is. Yeah. So in any effort we have to overcome lust, it's actually an effort to love Krishna. And we're also, in the material world, we're very much overcome by lust. It's our natural condition. And every effort that we make to overcome that lust is an effort to love Krishna, to offer that love and receive that love. And every effort you make to control your lower nature is pleasing to Krishna because it's an effort to love him. And he in this condition, he takes that as love. Although, by definition, that is not bhava or prema. But the effort is to achieve bhava or prema. So Krishna will accept that effort as an action of love. So we can use that word a little more liberally. I'm loving Krishna. I'm trying to love Krishna. How? By trying to overcome my anarthas. That's my manifestation of loving Krishna. That's how I love Krishna in this condition. And so Krishna appreciates that. And then we say, well, if that's what you want, Krishna will help you. And why would Krishna help you? Because that's what he wants. But although he wants it, if you don't want it, he's not going to bother with it, even though he wants it. But if you want it, then he's right there to help you because the nice thing about Krishna consciousness is that whatever you're trying to achieve on the level of Krishna consciousness, Krishna wants you to achieve it. So because he wants you to achieve it, then he's there to help you. And anytime we're having difficulty, it means that perhaps we don't want Krishna consciousness enough, and therefore we're not getting sufficient help. But if you want it, if you want Krishna consciousness, you already know that Krishna wants it, and so, and Krishna's obviously going to help you, right? So that's how we see our love in the stage of Vaidhi sadhana, where it's not technically love, but it's love in the sense of the willingness to give up what is in the way of bhakti. And so sometimes Prabhupada would use the word love. He said, my disciples, they have love for me. Because we were willing to give up the things we love for the service of Prabhupada, so then Prabhupada saw that as love, at least love in our condition as best we can give it. And so it's a nice meditation to think that every time I am able to give up something that's in the way of my Krishna consciousness, that Krishna sees that as love, or that can be defined as love, or that's how I manifest my love, because anything that gets in the way of my relationship with Krishna is preventing love from developing, and the love is the thing that pleases Krishna. So that's kind of the where this class is going to. If we can meditate on what sometimes I look at love like a substance, like a food. And you think of when you love somebody and you're inviting them over to your home, then you think, well, what do they like to eat? What can I give them that they would like? Isn't it? Don't you think like that? That's natural. And so if you think that way in terms of Krishna, you think, well, what does Krishna like to eat? He likes to eat love. I have to give him love. In my life, if for whatever I do, I can do it by giving up something that I enjoy, sacrificing that so I can serve Krishna better, then I'm offering him love. That's love on my level. I'm offering, and then I see it kind of like a food. This is what I'm offering Krishna, love. So that's, our whole life is about loving Krishna. Is this pleasing? And what I'm doing, is that pleasing Krishna? Is it giving him pleasure? And I know, I've talked about this long ago, I talked about this idea. It's an interesting idea, because the idea of us giving pleasure to Krishna, because as conditioned souls, we would think, well, how can I give pleasure to Krishna? I'm just an ordinary person. But we can. And the reason we think we can't give pleasure to Krishna is because I am who I am, and he's God, and he's full of pleasure, and he's full of bliss. But every living entity can give pleasure to Krishna, because Krishna is dear to everyone, and Krishna appreciates the service of everyone. So even though we are who we are, we can give pleasure to Krishna. Yes? Yeah. On some level, Krishna is not so picky. I mean, in a sense, yes. But in a broader sense, because of his compassion, he's not so picky, so he accepts our love and our affection. And I mentioned previously, not previously, maybe a few years ago, how, this example of why would Krishna care about me? And it kind of makes Krishna a God who has no feeling. He only cares about certain people. But Krishna cares about everyone. And so we shouldn't think of Krishna as someone who doesn't care. Or we'd give the idea that Krishna doesn't care because he's engaged in Leela, and those Leelas are full of bliss, and we're down here, and just down here, far away from those Leelas. So what does Krishna have to do with us? But Krishna is a sentient being, that's why we have senses. So sentient being means one who feels. So Krishna does feel. So anything we can do to please him, he's happy, it makes him happy. And our goal of life is to make Krishna happy. And so if you study the residents of Braj, everything they're doing, even if it doesn't look like it, it's just to make Krishna happy. And we had once mentioned that the cowherd boys, if they're eating, and they're eating something that's good, like a sweet apple, a mango, sandesh, and they think, this is really good. Here, Krishna, why don't you take it? Because it's so good. So From the point of view of Vaidhi Bhakti, you can't bite an apple to see if it's good and then cut it up and put it on the altar. The cowherd boys, their relationship is different, so that's what they do. And so their immediate thought is, this tastes good, let me give it to Krishna. It's just, everything is about what will make Krishna happy. And that's, when you're in love, that's all you think about. What will make this person, what can I do to make this person happy? Isn't it? So that's the way we're supposed to think. Like, although I don't love Krishna, but what can I do to make, my whole existence is to make him happy. Because he thrives on that. That's his food. And that's why when Prabhupada was asked, Srila Prabhupada, what will make you happy? He said, to love Krishna. Prabhupada, how can we please you the most? To love Krishna. Because Prabhupada's just trying to help us love Krishna, and that will please Krishna if we please Krishna. And that will please Prabhupada because he just wants us to love Krishna because he doesn't want anything from us personally. So, if you love Krishna, if I love Krishna, Prabhupada's pleased, Krishna's pleased. This is what Krishna wants. And we know this, it's in our philosophy, but hopefully by discussing it through looking at Krishna's pastimes and how he interacts with devotees, that we can understand it better. That whatever we do, it's a love that Krishna is attracted to. And our Western conditioning, it's all about externally. Does it look good? Does it feel good? Does it taste good? That we're very focused on the substance. The substance, which is just the means, the paraphernalia through which we offer that love. But the love is the main thing. Like kirtan, nice melody, nice mridanga. But the love is the main thing. Cooking, the love is the main thing. Painting, the love is the main. Deity worship, the love is the main thing. In fact, in deity worship, Prabhupada said if there's no love, it's idol worship. Because then it becomes dharma. It just becomes a duty. I have to do this. So that's the idea. Love is beyond the I have to. Love is more natural, spontaneous. Okay, so we've gone an hour and 2 minutes. So do you have any questions or comments? Or do you need any clarification? I will be happy to help you understand I will be happy to help you understand what you can't understand until you have love of Krishna. There's just a lot of things you can't understand because it would only be an intellectual exercise. And even trying to understand intellectually, we may not. But even if we don't, if we have love of Krishna, that's okay. Just like the gopis are glorified as simple village girls who were not philosophers. They're glorified because they love Krishna. The wives of the Brahmins are glorified because the Brahmins are supposed to be very pakka, very pure, very knowledgeable, and their wives were not considered as pakka and knowledgeable, but they loved Krishna. And later their husbands realized that their wives were better than them because they had love for Krishna. So it's not about what you know, it's about who you are. And so, of course, if what you know can help you develop love of Krishna, that's good. If what you know helps you become proud that you know more than others, then what's the point? No, so now your knowledge has made you proud. Your knowledge is supposed to make you pure. It's supposed to enhance your love, your affection for Krishna. And then that love and affection manifests through love and affection for Krishna's devotees. So that's the idea. So, is that good? Are you happy? I don't know if next week we will continue on this topic. Maybe there's more to talk about that I haven't realized. Or maybe you realize there's more to talk about and you can send me a message and say, could you talk about this? Otherwise, I think we should choose another topic. So maybe Alana, you could think about that. If there's more aspects of this topic of love that we haven't covered, if you want to let me know, or you want to pick another topic, or if not, then just let me know that you don't have one and I can think of one. Okay? Is that all right? Okay. So we will end now. I don't see any questions. That means everyone's happy. And we will see you next Monday. And next Monday also I'm giving class in Alachua, which will be 45 minutes after this class ends, if you can stay up that late. Okay, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaura Premanandi. Hari Hari Bol.